Welcome. You're listening to The Present Professional,
where we explore the intersection between professional and personal development
to change your experience of life and work with every episode.
So tune in and let's go.
Let's go. Welcome to another episode of The Present Professional. Today, we have a special guest with us, Richard Barrett, a writer, a philosopher, a painter, and a soul having a human experience. And we're so excited to have him on after going through the 7 levels of consciousness model and how we were excited about looking at all of that. And we reached out to his organization, the Bear Value Center, and we're able to connect with him. So we're really excited to share the human behind all of the insight that we've gone over in the last couple episodes. And with that, I think I did an all right job introducing you, Richard. But anything else that you'd want the our audience to know?
No. Just maybe you could put in my websites. People can go there and find my books. I forgot to mention I'm an author also. But anyhow, I'll put a couple of websites where you can find more information.
Mm-hmm. And we'll leave all of that in the show notes as well for you guys. And one part of the introduction conversation with Richard that I thought was really interesting and was really close to my heart and some of the things that I've been exploring in my life is this look between how the ego develops and how we spend a lot of our lives, our early lives, developing that ego and developing the shield and what kind of that protection and defense mechanisms. And then we spend the other balance once we kind of see that, unraveling it and how that relates to becoming a leader, not just within an organization, but really a leader of your life. So I want to turn that over to Richard to introduce that concept to you guys.
Well, great. Look, please interrupt me because I'm like one of those that advert you have for ever-ready batteries. Once I'm going, it's difficult to stop. So I want to leave spaces for your questions. All right. So from what you've just said so far, people have an idea of what the ego and the soul, and so let's get that sorted out. There's nothing wrong with the ego. It's the fears of the ego which are the problem. The fears of the ego really come in 3 dimensions. I don't have enough. I'm not loved enough, and I'm not enough. It's about self-esteem. And so during the first 20 odd years of our lives, we develop these fears. Now, where does the ego come from? Well, the ego was created by the soul pretty much in the first 2 years of your life to act as a buffer to this world of separation. The soul comes from a 4-dimensional energetic continuum where there is only love and connection and no separation. And then it finds itself living in this 3-dimensional material world, and the separation is very painful. So the soul creates the ego as a psychic entity in order to block the sense of separation. And the ego says to the soul says to the ego, go ahead, you look after me in this 3-dimensional world. Now, the problem is the ego takes its job very seriously, isn't aware that it has this instruction, and does the best job it can. And so for the first 20 years of your life, you go through the surviving stage of development. The next stage is the safe relationship stage of development, and then the self-esteem stage of development. So these 3 stages of development, by the time we get to 20, we're pretty much complete with them, but we've also learned all sorts of fears about getting our needs met. Now, some people have an easy journey. They're born to self-actualized parents who give them a real sense of who they are and allow them to fully express themselves. Most people on the planet never have that experience. And so practically everybody that I know, everybody on the planet has these fear-based beliefs. to some degree, which belong to the ego. And the rest of your life is about letting go of those beliefs so that you can live from soul consciousness. And so, as I said, many people never get to that fourth stage of development. They get stuck in the first three stages. And however, if you're brought up by self-actualized parents who really take care of you and nurture you and look after your soul, the soul really only wants to do three things. It wants to self-express, connect, and contribute. And so if you're able to do that, and if your parents are able to teach you how to do that, then you have plain sailing up to the fourth stage of development, through the fourth stage of development, into the fifth, sixth, and seventh stages. And that fourth stage is all about freedom. I'll stop there because that gives you an overview of the journey of the ego and the soul.
Wow. Moving through those three stages and being born to self-actualized parents. I think that's an interesting combination, and through a lot of my readings and trainings in Eastern philosophy, as you know, through yoga and meditation, that is, you know, said to be the last life, right? Being born into a yogic family. And I think that's, like you mentioned, something that's really rare. Get those to get those two together.
Yeah.
And then
you can be born into a regular family, but if there's a lot of fear in the family and the parents haven't managed to overcome their fears, they will transmit those fears to the child.
and then how does one become aware of the core fears that they're carrying from their childhood if it's so just ingrained in how they've been navigating the world for 20 years?
Well, the answer to that question is pretty easy. Pain. Emotional pain. Upset, conflict. Anything that lacks harmony in your life generally comes from a belief that you either don't have enough, you're not enough, or you're not loved enough. And so if you're having a difficult time with your relationships, if you're having a difficult time with your work, you know, look at yourself. What are the beliefs that I have? What needs do I have that are not being met? You see, during the first three stages of development up to the age of 20, we have needs. During the first 2 years, the need is to be nurtured and cared for. In other words, to survive, and the survival need. Now, and then from 2 to about 7 or 8, the need is to belong and be in a loving environment. And then from about 8 or 9 till early 20s, the need is to be recognized and to be seen, particularly by your parents and by your peers. So if none of those, if you don't get any of those needs met, you will spend the rest of your life trying to get those needs met. Now, a perfect example, which all of your listeners will know, is Donald Trump. He has unmet needs from every stage of early development, and hasn't really got to the transformation stage or the fourth stage because he's still trying to get his needs met from his childhood.
Wow. You know, this is hitting home for me, Richard, because I have a 20-month-old son, and you know, I how do you know if you're self-actualized? I think I'm doing a pretty decent job of being aware, very aware. But
all right, well, let's ask you a few questions, shall we?
Okay.
What's your biggest fear?
Wow. My biggest fear is that I won't have enough time to reach enough people, to help enough people to unlock their best lives and their self.
Okay, so you're focused on helping other people. Now that's going to have an impact on your wife and your family because you're going to be torn between your sense of purpose and the needs of your family. And that is going to create, if you're not careful, you're going to leave your children wanting more of you, not getting enough of you, and not getting their needs met. So it doesn't really matter. You see, the soul enters into life with the idea of self-expression, connection, and contribution. It doesn't matter how big or little. That's the ego talking. Oh, I want to reach all these people in the world and I want to change this. God, that's the ego. The soul doesn't care. The soul doesn't absolutely bloody care how many people you reach. All it cares about is, are you living self-expression, connection, contribution? So the soul doesn't measure. It's the ego that measures, for God's sake. Oh, yeah, we spoke to 10,000 people last week. Oh, yeah, this, that. That's all ego speak. So the sphere that you have, and it's always a good question, is that it is coming from a misplaced sense of ego. So it doesn't matter. You have to care for those who you love and care for them in every way possible. And you have to put their needs ahead of your needs.
Wow.
That's the secret. I did a coaching session with a fellow the other day who, he and his wife were really not getting along. And so we talked about, well, he said, well, I told her I've got these needs, I've got this, I need this. I said, okay, how about if we make the relationship non-transactional and you just really focus on her needs, and you'll get all your needs met automatically. 3 days later, he called me, he said, it really worked. I said, yeah. What you put out into the world is what you get back. When you focus on other people's needs, not your needs, it's magic. You see, I learned about 15, 20 years ago, and I have no needs. What does that mean? It means that when I'm living in soul awareness, my soul creates my environment in such a way that everything I could possibly need arrives even before I know I need it. But you see, the ego can't stand that. The ego says, God, I got to have this, I got to have that. You see, the ego is impatient because it has fear. The soul doesn't have fear. The biggest fear people have is death. Well, actually, for the soul, there is no death, does not exist. It's just I'm having an experience in three-dimensional material reality, and then I'll stop having that experience and I'll go back to fourth-dimensional energetic reality where there is total connection, total love, and everything is fantastic.
Wow. Richard, can I ask a quick follow-up question to that?
No, you're not allowed any questions whatsoever.
How do you balance the ego when it comes to your social life? Because we're social beings and social creatures, but most people that I come across are very ego driven, and when you disconnect from the ego and focus on the soul, it's almost like you're speaking two different languages, and it's hard to communicate and balance that.
Where would I be without my ego? I'd be, I love my ego. It's the fears in my ego that are the issue. I'm a character. I'm a personality. You can tell that. And that's wrapped up in my ego. But the ego it's the fears of the ego that get in the way of my living my soul destiny. So be who you are. But don't allow fear into your life. Subtle fear. That, I'm not loved enough, or things that we learn in childhood, which are actually, we learn them because we don't have a fully functioning brain. First 2 years of your life, your child is 20 months, it really only has one brain that's working, and that's the reptilian mind brain, and all it really needs is looking after, feeding, keeping dry, and love, basically. But then from 2 to now, then it begins to form the ego, and then from 2 to 8, the limbic mind brain, which is a relationship brain, forms, and it needs to feel loved and belonging. And then from about 8 or 9 to early 20s, the rational brain, the neocortex, forms. Now, you'll notice certainly true for me, and I'm absolutely sure true for you, that during your teenage years, you do really stupid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Really stupid stuff because you don't have a fully functional rational brain. And so, and during those childhood years, you don't have a during the 2 to 8, you don't have your rational brain is not fully developed. So everything happens to you, you interpret it through your emotions, and they stay with you. So the things that you learn in the first 2 years of your life are deeply embedded. The next, from 2 to 8, what you learn is embedded, but not as deeply. And then the fear. And then from 8 to 22, the fears you learn are not so deeply embedded. It's relatively easy to correct the fears around self-esteem. It is less easy to correct the fears around belonging and love, and it's very difficult to correct the fears that the baby learns in the womb and during the first 2 years of life.
Wow.
And that applies to
Taking in a
everybody.
lot there, Tony.
Yeah, and so now who are you? Okay, I'm working in the world. I'm doing leadership development courses for people. Fine. Well, actually, that's fine. But actually, what you're really doing, what you're trying to do or unravel for them, are these fears from the first 3 years of development, which are causing them pain and blocking them from being the best person they can be. And so leadership development for me is a misnomer. It's ridiculous. You're not teaching leaders, you're teaching people how to become whole so they can lead themselves. And then through the example of leading themselves, they automatically become leaders of others. I was just talking yesterday to a young woman, late 30s, early 40s, promoted to a really high position in a big company in Europe. And there were lots of people, men and women with better qualifications. But she got the job because of who she is. And she'd been on my course, Living Your Soul Destiny, a year ago, and she got the job 6 months later. Not that she was already well cooked, but and so I was talking to her yesterday. I said, "So what? Where do you spend your time?" She said, "Really, I spend my time helping my people stay sane and to have balanced lives. That's where I spend most of my time. Not on not on the business and the production, but on helping my people get balanced lives." And therefore she gets a lot out of people by helping them to be balanced and to reduce the fears that they have and the stress, because stress is all self-induced. Even though you might be under tight deadlines and everything, stress is actually just you letting fear dominate your life.
Mm. Letting fear dominate your life. And this brings me back to the point that you made on meeting the needs of others and like focusing on the needs of others. And when you mentioned that to start, that whole concept of leadership just came back to my mind of that. And then you mentioned what she's doing is also meeting her own needs, leading her own life. And then through that, being able to help others meet their needs. So it almost seems like that leadership is enabling other souls to self-express.
Yes, and being a role model.
A role model for the self-expression as well.
Yes, exactly. A role model for self-expression, connection, and contribution. And that's so there's something for your 20-month-old, Tony. You want to get them into a school or a learning system where they are taught how to self-express, how to play and be helpful with other children, and that's connection, and how to contribute to the classroom or to the school. Self-expression, connection, contribution. If you can teach your kids that at an early age, they'll be well on the way to self-actualization when they get to their early 20s. And that's the best thing you can do for your children. It's the best thing you can do for humanity. We need those children who are brought up like that. We need them in order to change the course of the world.
Agreed.
So
Definitely.
that's the biggest contribution you can make to humanity, is to bring your kids up. So there's no, forget the rest. Okay, you have to earn a living, etc., etc. But the most important thing is to bring up self-actualized kids.
And the coaching, the coaching framework that I've put together through my organization, we came to these conclusions. And the first time I heard Richard say connection, contribution, and self-expression, I was like, wow, all right. What did I say? It was synchronistic. He said everything's synchronistic.
Yeah. That's that. My wife was been a clinical psychologist all her life. Was amazed when she met me 10 years ago of what I produced, and she said, the most profound of all your teaching is self-expression, connection, contribution. That's the most profound thing you put out there.
Sometimes the simplest things to express are the most difficult things to embody.
Well, for men in particular, they do have difficulty expressing their emotions and feelings because as young boys, they get the message that that's not kosher to talk about your feelings. You need to be strong. You need to be tough. You don't want to be a little girl. Gosh, what's that saying? First of all, it's saying don't be in touch with your feelings, and secondly, it's saying women are weaker. I mean, how bloody stupid is that?
I agree, and I would say that's reflected.
We need the world to be run by women, not by men. God, it was so fed up with the male fear-driven ego. It's everywhere.
Yep, and I'd say it's reflected in asking for help as well. I'd say I definitely work with more women than I do men from a coaching perspective, and I think that's just from the sheer numbers of women that are willing to say, I'm open to help in order to get what I want, in order to live the life that I want. And with men, it's a little bit more of, I got to push through and do everything myself, or it's not worth it, or I'm a failure.
Yeah, and that begins in childhood.
Mm-hmm.
The attitude.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious of your thoughts on the Enneagram and the way that those 9 personality types tie towards different areas of the way the ego develops, and also the original essence behind each of the types. And so I'm just curious to get your thoughts on that system.
Very easy. Well. Don't know much about it.
Okay. It's like when
I've studied it many years ago, but I couldn't talk in depth about it.
Mm-hmm. When I think of the question that you asked Tony about fear, I'd say that my core ego fear is definitely wrapped up in the type 3, or the achiever, is the fear of failure, right? The fear of
yeah. Well, okay, let's talk about that, because that is a biggie in work. Achievement. Oh my God. If people ask you a value, then you say achievement, that, oh my God, that is really going to undermine who you can become. The Japanese have a really and then failure. Oh gosh, the Japanese have a really good way of talking about failure. They say missing the target, which is so much healthier, because you always have another shot at the target. But if you're a failure, it's like, God, I'm a failure. I mean, it's the end of the world. It's
That
only a
feels better.
word. Yeah. So there's no such thing as failure. There's just, I didn't quite make it this time. I can try again next time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but see, the language is really significant. When a parent says you'll become a failure or you're a failure, you're conditioning the mind of that child to be a failure. And the word is an extremely strong word in the English language. And we need to de-emphasize it, that word, and say, no, you know, if somebody says, oh, your child comes home and says, so-and-so said I'm a failure. No, you're not a failure. It's just that you might not be very good in that particular thing, but look at what else you can do.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Missing the target. I love that. I love that. There's
Just missing the target. No, okay, we've got a bunch of arrows. We can have another shot. You know, we don't have to hit the bloody target bed off right away.
You
mm-hmm.
know, with my son, my 20-month-old, he's coming up on 2, and he one thing I noticed in him in the last few months and even into now, um, Gallup calls it the arranger. It's similar to what John just talked about, a personality type. But what I noticed, what he does is he just likes to take stuff and move it to a different place
Yeah,
to where he thinks it should go. He just
yeah,
rearranges the room. Anywhere he goes, his grandmother's house, on both sides of the family, our
okay.
home. He just likes to rearrange stuff. And if you weren't paying attention, you would say, "Hey, stop taking that and stop moving that and stop." But I don't tell him to
Okay.
stop. I just watch. And I just watch
Yeah.
his creative mind just do it's just fascinating to just watch him go instead of stopping him
So
and
he's
saying
doing that
no.
for probably one of two reasons. One is he's creating the space that makes him feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where he feels, aha, that, that feels better. He's doing it for feelings. And you might ask him, you know, you might ask him, what feeling have you got as you move that chair over there? And what was going on for you? What do you, how do you feel different when that chair is there rather than over here?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Uh, because we never get kids to talk about their feelings. A huge mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Children should be brought up not only to talk about values, but also to talk about feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Talk
Mm-hmm.
about how they want to express themselves, and all of those things, just coming back to, again, right, the expression, contribution, and connection.
Yeah.
And
Our 5-year-old granddaughter, I can't remember recently, she wasn't feeling so good when she went to bed, and she in the morning she got up and she said, I was a bit grumpy because I was feeling sad. Bloody hell. I mean, to have that ability to express what was going on for her, I, I, I was grumpy because I was feeling sad, but I'm fine today. I'm feeling fine today. I had a good sleep. That's pretty much what she said. I said, congratulations. To be able to explain your feelings and why you have your feelings is really an amazing gift for life. I mean,
and mhm,
today, I mean, okay, you've got feelings today. Both of you have feelings. Okay, where are they coming from? They're coming from beliefs. Now, you might not understand what the beliefs are, but and you don't need to understand them because they pass. They always, whatever you're feeling, they go away. They come and they go, and we're not really in control of our minds, and so sometimes we have feelings that we don't know why, but we don't have to dwell on them. We just
mhm.
have to say, "Oh, hello, sadness. I'm not sure what you're doing in my mind at the moment, but anyhow, I'm going to respect the fact that you are in my mind, and that maybe I have some needs which are not being met, but I just let you be there, and I'm not going to get upset about
It really sounds like a mindful, detached perspective.
it.
Like to be
Exactly.
able to observe the mind's fluctuations
Sure.
from and not be right attached to the feeling and the story,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
observe it and get curious about the need behind that feeling.
yeah. The famous psychotherapist who invented something called psychosynthesis, Roberto Sacchioli from Florence in Italy. He's now dead, but he said everything you identify with dominates you. Everything you disidentify with, you can control.
Hmm.
So whenever you have a sleepless night and you know why you had a sleepless night, you're identifying with something,
Hmm.
and you can let go. You don't have to identify with, because the place of peace is the place of, let's say, mindfulness or mindlessness. Like it's actually living a good life. It's easy. You just have to tame the mind.
Tame the mind. What advice would you give to someone who's just starting their journey in taming their mind, like kind of before they reach that
Well,
evolutionary
that's
phase?
that's the awareness stage. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so when somebody is aware that their mind is controlling their beliefs, controlling their feelings, and they want to change that, that's awareness. Most people are not aware. So what advice would I give them? Well, I would ask them to journal their feelings. What are you feeling today? Write it down. Just and be really aware of what's going on in your mind. You don't have to explain it; just be aware of it, and then talk about it. So most of us are in relationships or anything, and say, or you come home from work and say, to your spouse, "Yeah, I was feeling really upset today." I mean, this happened to me this week. I had an art class, and the teacher hardly paid any attention to me whatsoever. And as a consequence, I really messed up my painting. I came home, I was pissed. And I said to my wife, you know what I'm feeling is that this person, I'm there 3 hours, there are 8 of us. So I would normally have 20 minutes of his time. I got 3 minutes. I feel this person is disrespecting me and not attending to my needs. And consequently, I'm feeling pissed. And quite frankly, I don't want to go back to that sort of environment. So I wrote a note to the principal and said, this is what happened to me today. This is how I feel about it. And I won't be coming back, and you can reimburse me.
So that's the acknowledgement, the awareness of how you were feeling, and then
Yeah.
the request that you can make.
Yeah. The request. I didn't communicate anger to the principal. I communicated the facts. This person was on his cell phone. I only got 3 minutes. I should have had 20 minutes at least. I was crying out for help. And I don't think this is good enough. So I will be leaving the class, and I would like my money back.
Hmm.
It wasn't an angry letter. It was just this is the situation.
And that's so powerful because, a lot of times we get trapped in, trying to keep everyone else comfortable,
Sure.
trying to, right, not making those requests for ourselves because it's going to be awkward, or I shouldn't be able to, I shouldn't stand up for myself like that. That's kind of getting back into those fear-based beliefs of, you know, my needs don't matter enough. I'm not, I'm
Mm.
not enough. Right.
Yeah, or I might disturb the situation. I'll put up with it.
Mm-hmm.
No, this applies very much to coaching. The danger in coaching, that your potential danger is that you try to please the person who you're coaching instead of giving them tough love. It's like, okay, if you keep going like this, it's not going to work. So stop it. You'll know when to say that. You'll know when to say that. You'll feel it because you get into soul speak. Coaching for me is all about soul speak. I disappear and my soul shows up and I say what's going on for me. And if I have to give a tough message, I know I have to give a tough message. But you cannot be a coach and want to be liked.
Man, I
They
think
don't go together.
Mm-hmm.
for it feels like that's true for leadership
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, but yeah. What do we mean by leadership? I mean, I think we need to throw that word away. I don't like it at all. It speaks of hierarchy. It speaks of I'm better than you are. It speaks of power. I really
Yeah.
want to do away with that word.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious how you would structure an organization based on this leading with soul consciousness.
Well, I would like this example of this lady I was talking about. I would put into positions of leadership
Mm-hmm.
um, people who care about their people. It's the number one requirement for a leader is that they care about the well-being of their people.
Mm.
That's the number one requirement for leadership, because your ability to produce, to be efficient, to meet whatever goals have been set depends on your people.
Wow.
And if they have all their needs met, and they are not stressed, and they can come to you and talk about what's going on in their lives outside of work and inside of, then that's the sort of person you want. You don't want a slave driver. In
Mm.
fact, I say, forget goals. Goals are a waste of time. I mean, set intentions. Our intention is to do this. Now, a goal is fixed. It's like I've got to get 60 of these out of the door by next week. No, my intention is to do the best I can at that particular. And so replace goals with intent. You might even do better than that when you set an intention. Last May, I decided to stop writing. I've written 14 books and start painting. That was the message I got from my soul. And so I set my intention to be the best painter I could be, the best painter for the world, not the best painter in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I would like to say that I love that though. I love the picture of that. And at the same time, we've built a capitalist society that works against that.
Sure.
We've built
Power.
structures in
Level
place that,
3.
yeah,
Ego. Fears of ego.
right. That people that the market and investors are gonna react to goals and that are gonna react to targets and quarter close numbers and things like that that are going to be driving a lot of the pressures that are on leadership, a lot are on organizations. So when you come into when you step into the real world of a leadership team and maybe folks are caught up in that fear, or a team that is that has a mix of people that really are people first and really care about their people, and then some folks that are slave drivers or more concerned with the investors, or more concerned with production, safety, maintenance. How do you balance that across the team and get people interested in moving towards
Well,
this way of
okay,
leadership?
so you could say that, well, you have these goals, but what is the higher intention behind them? Okay, take it to a new level. Okay, so this is the goal that we've been given. But what intention could we make that would help us to achieve that goal?
Hmm.
Because you see, with intentions, you invite the universe to support you. That's what happens. when you set an intention. It's like okay, so so I set an intention to be a painter, the best painter I can be. Just things just fall in my lap. It's like I hadn't been painting 6 months and I got 4 commissions. It's never heard of. I mean, just which all challenged me to become a better painter. So I never set a goal to get commissions. It just happened. The universe will conspire. If you link to the soul and the soul's intention, the universe conspires to support your soul.
Wow, that's true.
I completely agree. And
okay, so what are your guys' intentions? What are you doing in life as an intention? What would be your intention?
My intention in life.
Oh, in your business.
My intention in my business is to really bring the human essence back to business. And I think that this is a really strong way to do that. And it's how do we create soul conscious leaders if if it's not just replacing folks.
So did you set a goal to bring the human essence to 50 people this year?
No,
of course not. It's stupid. Why limit yourself to 50 when you could be 5,000?
That's right. It's it's the how will reveal itself
exactly,
when we set the intention on what we want to do, what we want to create.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because you're operating from the level of self-expression, which is the soul's intention. What is the soul wanting to do? The soul incarnated into life to do things, to self-express, connect. Now, each soul has specific gifts. You have a particular gift. Tony has specific gifts. I have specific gifts. And you may have gifts you don't even know you've got. Okay, well, all the soul is, he wants to express that. That's all. 50 years ago, I last picked up a paintbrush. And like all of a sudden, I'm like totally consumed. My soul is totally consumed by the desire to paint. Why? I have no idea.
But you just followed what it was asking to express.
Exactly. You've got to surrender. See, that's the surrender. The trick with the soul is surrender to the soul. If you think you know what you want to do, well, think again. Stop thinking. Just allow. Follow. I tell people, follow the breadcrumbs. Where are the breadcrumbs leading you?
And for those,
what's in your heart? What brings you joy? Okay, follow that.
That joy will lead you to what the soul wants to express.
Exactly. I was just talking with my wife. Since I started painting, my wife started doing pastel. And I said to her, have you noticed that when you do a finished piece of work and you really enjoy it, that I'm looking at something my wife just did here, next to me. And it's the same with me in my painting. When you walk by the room, you have to stop and look at it because it brings you joy. You can't. It's almost like you created something that's bringing you joy, and every time you look at it, it brings you joy. It's like wow. And that's how I feel about my paintings. It's like wow, every one of them brings me joy. But then I'm on to the next one, so I can let it go and let somebody else enjoy it too.
And I think it's just such a strong distinction as well between joy and pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
That it's, I want to encourage people to, sit with that and get curious about, is this just something that feels good, or is it truly a feeling of joy? Like to follow the right breadcrumbs in spirit of the soul rather than the ego.
first of all, most people are not very familiar with joy. And secondly, pleasure is sometimes, particularly in the religious circles, is frowned upon. You have to suffer. I'm sorry. You have to suffer. Rubbish.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're thinking about folks that we went over the awareness side of things, and you recommended journaling and starting to step into listening to the way your soul wants to express itself. But then say you move on to that next stage. There you're starting to see these things, you're starting to see a different path unfold in front of you. Like your soul is wanting something other than what you're doing at that moment. And then the fear of not being secure, the fear of change, the fear of
If I do that, I
stepping
won't be
into,
able to earn a living.
yeah, the fear of stepping into
Mm-hmm.
your soul's work. Like how do people overcome that and step into their soul's self-expression?
Well, with difficulty mostly. Requires level 4 courage, and the understanding that, if it is truly a soul expression, you won't have any needs. It'll all be. I mean, I was up to the age of 45. I was a top class transportation engineer. I worked at the World Bank, traveled to countries all over the world, advising their governments on how to build urban transport systems. And then all of a sudden, I was bored with my experience and said, I'm going to do what I've been doing for the last 20 years. And people said, oh, it's crazy. You're going to leave the World Bank. If you stay another 10 years, you'll get a 6-figure tax-free pension. That is stupid. And you're going to do something nobody ever heard of you. I hadn't written one book. And I said, well, I can't help it. That's what I have to do. I had a very successful 20 years. And then all of a sudden, that's me and my soul says, oh, you can stop writing now. Stop printing. Okay.
The surrender.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's a really strong foundation of basic trust that you have,
Yeah.
that
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
the universe conspires in your favor.
Yeah, so one of my e-learning courses that you can find on my website is about how to do this. So that first you have to become aware of your soul, and then you have to befriend your soul, then you have to connect with your soul, then you have to trust your soul, and then you become one with your soul. Trusting is the hardest bit.
It sounds like that's that final stage, that that once you have the trust, then you can fully step into the self-expression, just because then what do you have?
Exactly.
What do you have to fear?
Exactly. Let go of the fears of the ego. Trusting the soul means you've got to let go of the fears of the ego.
Now, at that point in the process, what was the thing that helped you trust your soul to really step into that journey, and how did you develop that trust?
Basically, many things, but one is just looking at my life and seeing what was happening and realizing that I was in a sense being guided, even though I didn't know I was being guided. And that when I look back, I could see things that had happened to me, which I thought were disasters at the time. Actually, when I look back, were actually really positive things. I stopped doing that, and I was very wedded to doing that. And then I had to stop doing that, and I was upset. And then when I look back, a few years later, it's like, my God, that was the best thing that happened. I remember I formed the Barra Values Center, and I was CEO for 10 years, and I realized all of a sudden that I had to stop being CEO. And it was really upsetting. I thought, well, I've got to hand it over. And then it turned out to be that's the best thing I did. And so, because I then started writing, and then I wrote another 10 or 12 books. And then the same thing happened again last May. Okay, so I was halfway through a book when I got the message, stop writing, start painting. I thought, okay, I know, I recognize these messages now, so I just follow. And yeah, it's not sure where it's all going, but I'm definitely moving there in a rapid manner, where it is. I mean, one of the ideas I came up with was just 2 months ago was to have, how in a company you have the list of values and you're all on the wall. Well, I just came up with the idea of value and mission portraits. So if you have a company and you've got a certain mission, let me paint a picture of what that means. So there's a company in Indonesia I've been working with, and they asked me to do a portrait of their mission. Now, their mission is the basic philosophy of all Indonesian, which is called gotong royong, which means working together for the good of the community. So they said to me, we want you to do a painting of gotong royong. Do whatever you like. You can see that on my website. I delivered it a month ago, and it's quite a large painting, and it's 10 so people all working in a rice paddy field all together in a sense of community, doing something for the community, and they loved it. But value and mission portraits for organizations is my new idea.
Your soul's new
Richard,
idea.
I was going to ask you, when you get these messages or these moments in your life when you make a transition, is it an instant message that happens at the moment that you move forward on, or does it take a little while to fully unpack it, then you move into
It's the first one. I stopped being a transportation engineer and moved into being a transformation engineer. It took about a year or two to fully. I felt bored, and then I didn't. Then I realized what I was being asked to do. So it took a while. This last one, last May, happened in 2 weeks. It's like, yeah, but you'll know, because you suddenly whatever you're working on no longer brings you joy. You'll probably find you're bored, and so that is the point where you say, okay, what's going on? Where am I being? What am I being offered to do now, which will allow me to express so that I can find joy again.
Can you speak to the fear that occurs, like how you mentioned when you move from a transportation engineer to a transformation engineer, that fear of what people had to say? A lot of people I know want to make a difference or make a change in their life, but they're afraid from what people around them are saying, and it's causing them to freeze and not move.
Well, they're already freezing because they have the fear of their ego is that they want to be liked. So right there, you've got your problem. They're freezing because they want to be liked, and they're afraid of what other people would say. Where you say, "Fuck off! I'm gonna do this anyhow. I don't care. I don't care what you think. I don't care what other people think." You have to learn not to care, because you are loved. You are loved by the universe.
And I'd love to think that the real ones, that the real connections that you want to keep,
Yeah,
and
they'll show up.
that will stay.
They'll either stay or they'll go, but new ones will show up. And when I look back over my life, I look and I had friends who then became acquaintances, and then new friends came in and they became acquaintances. You move through life as you shift and elevate your consciousness. Your old friends no longer seem to fit in. You don't know what to talk about anymore with them, and then you find new people who you resonate with because you're on the same level of consciousness. So letting go is all part of surrender. Not just letting go of what you've been doing, but letting go of so-called friends. They're still friends and acquaintances, but they're not feeding your soul. But if you open yourself, you'll find other people who do feed your soul.
Surrender.
So don't be afraid of what other people. It's like there's the fear of the ego just blatantly blocking you.
And that's what I'm hearing is that, the key messages in this path to being able to hear, what your soul wants, and, in order to step into that expression is, like, one, developing this basic trust, and two, like, surrendering to the process, being patient.
Yeah. So if you want to, I wrote during the pandemic when we locked down, I wrote 18 e-learning courses. One of them is Living Your Soul Consciousness, and it's based on my book, What My Soul Told Me. What My Soul Told Me, most of my books take a year to write. What My Soul Told Me, I wrote in 2 months because it's exactly what my soul told me.
Wow.
And it lays out the 5 steps for living in soul consciousness. And there's an e-learning and there's a book which allow you to do that.
Beautiful. So we'll link to this material in the show notes, my friends. We have that way, if you want to start exploring this in a little bit more depth, that you'll be able to, start getting a little bit more acquainted with Richard's work and a little bit more acquainted with your original essence, yourself.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Richard, if there was one core message that you wanted to share with everyone on our podcast right now, what would you want to leave them with?
I would say that be aware of your fears and walk through them anyhow. It's what's holding you back. If the only thing holding you back is your fear, and I'm not, I don't have enough, I'm not loved enough, and I'm not enough. And you just identify that and leave it behind you, because it's just blocking your self-expression. It's like Tony said a few minutes ago, if you've got this idea about what are your friends going to say, well, that's the fear showing up. You just go ahead and do it.
Just go ahead and do it, my friends.
Yeah.
Richard, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. It was lovely. And listeners, thank you guys so much for staying with us and for listening week to week. And we'd love to get all of your feedback, ratings, and reviews wherever you get your podcasts. And you can interact with us at thepresentprofessionalpodcast.com, and we'll put links to all of Richard's work and different platforms in the show notes that you can check out as well. So I hope that you guys take everything that you learned from this conversation and everything from Richard's work to get more acquainted with your soul and step into leading your life, and through that, leading others. So
exactly.
Thank you
Leading
guys
self,
so much.
leading others.
Until next time, my friends.
Bye.